I've been doing piano covers for 4 years now, and during this time I've realized that there is not much information about how to do covers. Actually, you have covers and you have tutorials, but nothing really concrete about how you go for those things. That's where this idea came from. I just think that it's important to talk about this because classical music and pop music are very different. With pop music, you don't really have that same kind of clear instructions as you have with classical music, and with pop music, you're just kind of going on with what you hear. And I think there are some mistakes you could avoid, and that's why I want to talk about this matter. A bit of a warning, this video will be very long, so there are timestamps in the description box below. And I think that this video could be useful for other instruments just than pianists. I mean, obviously I'm a pianist, so I have most knowledge about piano covers. There are lots of points that will stand for other instruments too, so welcome to my tutorial on how to make covers. So, the first thing I want to talk about is technique, because obviously you can't really play unless you know some technique things, and I'm not going to delve too deeply into things, because obviously I represent one school, and other people think that this way of playing is better and this way of playing is better, so I'm just gonna talk about those basic things. And one of those basic things I really care about is lessons. Obviously, you don't need them for 12 years as I've done. I mean, 3 or 4 years is good enough base for starting doing covers, and maybe even a year if you're really determined. I just think passion is more important than what your skill is. I mean, obviously you need that skill to produce some good music, but if it's just music, nothing emotional in it, it's gonna sound really bad in my opinion. So basic technique things and basic theory knowledge things are great for you. And one of those things is correct body position. It's much easier if you're straight back and have your wrist like this when you're a pianist and just grabbing the instrument. There are lots of things that will stand for other instruments. You have to produce the sound correctly, and that makes a big difference down the way. How do you produce those sounds correctly? Well, one of those things is doing scales, and I know that I'm one of those people who hates scales, but once you start playing them, you kind of get these techniques going on, like you know how to play these random strings of notes that you can turn into different kinds of things. So scales is a big thing, like you can play it in adagio, you can play it allegro, you just either very slow or very fast, just scales, work on those, because that will help a long way with instruments and with voice. 0 to 4 are what you will need with pop music most likely. Like everything from 5 to 7 is kind of over the top, because pop music is rather simple compared to classical music, and that's the thing you need to know. And also major and minor keys. Also learning different styles and studying etudes. I started piano lessons when I was 7 years old, and I started with simple songs, and then I moved on to etudes, and once I gained those techniques from the etudes I was practicing, they stayed with me. Like, there are lots of things I learned when I was 8 or 9 or 10 that I still use, and etudes are one of the most important ways to learn those things, so do that. And that will build up your repertoire and technique styles. I mean, repertoire-wise, you need different styles to know how to play things. You need to know how to play staccato or very sharp movements, and you need to know how to play funeral marches and things like that, because pop music is very kind of varied, even though it's rather simple. Learn to read sheet music, because it will save you down the way. Sheet music is kind of useful in some cases, because sometimes you may have already sheet music available to get, and you just kind of look over that and you're just like, oh, this is how you play it, and it's much faster to do covers that way. But unless you don't actually possess sheet music, or there's none, you can do some of them, and that way you have those ideas going on and it's much easier. But, well, if you don't read sheet music, you at least need to know how to read chords. There are 12 keys 11 in an octave. For every key you learn the major and minor, and that's as simple as that. And once you have those 22 different chords, you will go through every song you know based on those. So at least learn your chords and learn to read them fast. So basics you need to know are scales, sheet musics or chords or tablature, and some intervals that are rather simple, like fifths and fourths and sevenths. They are the most important ones, then maybe seconds if you want the complexity to your songs, and nothing that much bigger. And chord changes, like how to do B minor and going from that to D minor, and that helps a long way when you're trying to play quickly. And my next point is that minimalism is a no-go with pop music. Like, I think a great comparison for this would be Justin Bieber and Sibelius. Music that is very simple, there aren't that many instruments. Compare that to Sibelius, and I'm taking an example out of Finlandia, which is 11 pages long for piano, and there are some chords with 9 or even 10 notes in them, so it's like you're just kind of wondering how you can do that. And also that means that you have your tablature filled out. You don't have to do anything new, but with pop music otherwise you have to fill something in, or otherwise it's just gonna sound too empty. So you need to complicate things a bit, add odd intervals, reverse some chords and play with rhythm, like not too much but enough so it isn't just like stuck, 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 but it's like little movements going on, like faster and slower. Think about impressionism, that's the idea I'm going for. And also follow the original song. I don't think that if you're just first going in, you should do these great changes, but later on, once you know how things work, actually, like maybe a year or two in, then you can go for it. And this is all I have to say for technique. So next I'm gonna talk about picking the right song, and there are lots of mistakes you can do, but there are 4 important points you need to know. The first, I think, that is the most vital one, is popularity. Because if you have a popular song, you will have much more things to reference back to. You will have other covers, and you will have some maybe tablature and chords and maybe even sheet music. But if it's just an unknown song, then again, you will be the first one to cover it, and that makes you more visible. So the more popular a song is, the easier it will be for you, but the more invisible you will be. And the second point is actually liking the song. Like, I've made the mistake of doing covers of songs I don't actually like, and that they aren't that good, so like the song before you cover it. Also, familiarity. You don't have to know the song, like chords and lyrics and everything going on, but take some time to think about it, just enough that you just get the mood and just like, oh, this is what's going on. And also, my point number 4, remember your skill level. Jumps in skill levels are quite hard to achieve, but do challenge yourself. If your skill level is here and you're just constantly picking songs that are on the same level, you will never progress. But on the other hand, if your skill level is here and you're picking a song up from here, then you're just kind of, that's a big difference. So move in intervals, like here, 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 and climb your way up to the top. Those are the 4 things that you need to know. And more technical aspects are complexity, for example, and melody, rhythm, and structure. About complexity, I think that there are songs that are very complex, like Bohemian Rhapsody. It's a song everybody knows. You have these great parts that are quite different, but in the manner they fit together rather well. So you want to think about that, but then again, are there many 2 parts? Are there too many things going on? So you have to kind of limit yourself with those parts until you have those skills to go for all of those parts. How many chords do those songs have? Duran Duran's Girls on Film is a great example of this. You can't fake how many chords a song has if you're doing a piano cover. If you're just playing constantly the same 2 chords, it's kind of getting like a little too repetitive in my opinion, so watch out for songs like that, because even though you can fake a lot, you can't fake complexity. How many instruments does the song actually have? Obviously, you can do songs that are meant for this big, great orchestra, but it's gonna be hard. Like, as I mentioned earlier, Finlandia, 11 pages long, and there are insane things in it. But then again, if you just have this guitar bass and vocal bass, it's gonna be really easy to do. So then again, you have to build up that complexity so it isn't too boring for you. Melody-wise, I would suggest choosing a song with catchy tunes. Those are very important. And I'm not talking about this earworm going on. I'm just talking about something that you like listening to and it's kind of making you interested in the music. Simple enough to arrange. I mean, if the melodies are just way out of there and just wondering why is it going like this, then it's not a good song to cover. When you're doing a piano cover, it sounds very boring if you're staying on the same note. I mean, with vocalists, it's a very different thing, because you're constantly changing the words, but with piano, it's just the same notes, so beware of that. Rhythm-wise, I only have one advice. Pick a song that's tempo isn't impossible. And by impossible, I mean that it isn't too fast. Slow songs are hard to play, but if it's so fast that you just can't play it, then you'd have no idea how to do that cover properly. Even though you can't take it slow and then steadily fasten and fasten and fasten, it may not sound that good. Structure. Finding a song that has clear parts or blocks. By this I mean it has this clear line between what is an intro, what is an outro, what is a bridge, what is a verse, what is a chorus part. They all have to support each other. That's mostly what you need to look out for in songs. So if you think a song is good, go for it, but beware. So you've picked your song, you have the technique to go for it, and now we have to arrange it. And arranging a song is the part where I mostly get pissed off. Like, seriously, there are some things that you just can't avoid. With arrangements, I think it's important to use whatever resources you have. You have chords, you have sheet music, you have other covers, you have tablature. Use those things as much as you can. Just look for other people's covers, because I have used other people's covers to figure out how to play things, and that is a very, very good way, actually. Arranging a song, well, before you even go for it, you have to learn it properly. Like, are there any variation between verses or choruses? Are there changes in feelings or a tempo? I mean, those are important things to know. There are two types of people. Like, one is the writing it down, and the other is by doing it memory. There are some restrictions to writing it down. Like, you have this clear idea of what's going on, but you just kind of don't stumble upon new things. You may just follow the same pattern and everything starts to blur together. But then again, writing is very helpful, because then you have something clear to look at. You have some kind of an idea of what to go for. You will remember everything. So if you're doing by memory, you may stumble upon some great ideas, but if you're doing it by writing, you will remember those ideas. So combine those two. Don't follow the original song blindly. Take some time, use your brain, and go for it in your interpretation. But don't change too many things, because covers are not original songs. You have to keep the melody lines similar enough, you have to keep rhythmic patterns similar enough. Rhythm you can either go faster or slower if you feel like it. You can change the genre of a song and then let it simmer for a while. There are some things you shouldn't rush into, and covering a song is one of those. Because the longer you think about a song, the clearer of an idea you have about it. And the clearer of an idea you have, the more easier it is actually to learn it. Those people who just 5 minutes after hearing song go for it and practice it and produce a cover in an hour are insane. You can't possibly learn that song properly. You have no idea what it's actually about. Take your time, and also when you're first going into the song, go with your instrument, and if you can, go by your ear. Then you have to listen to the song at the same time. And once you have that bass there, you can start building up complexity. You can add some rhythmic changes, some tempo changes, some volume changes, and then you have that song build up in complexity and it sounds like your own song. Practice-wise, I'm gonna say things that you will learn if you have taken some lessons. That means if you know these things already, you can skip this part. The first thing you need to know about practicing a song is learning it in blocks. If you just rush into a song, trying to scramble through it, it won't sound ever that good. But if you take it apart, like take some small parts, like a few lines, a few ideas, go slow on them, then fasten up, and take another block, learn it, and fasten that up until you have that original tempo and all those blocks, and then you can start building up together. So you have these blocks, then you go slowly through the whole thing, and then you add that speed. So eventually you will have that song and it will sound great. I think slow and steady is better than learning bad habits, especially if you have an instrument that you can learn really bad habits on. Like piano is simple in a way that you will never kind of do these big mistakes, but violin, singers, be careful about what you learn, because once you learn bad habits, it's really difficult to learn out of them. As for starting practice, I think it's good to start with scales or old repertoire, so you kind of warm up before going into these new challenges and you have control over your body. Consistency, oh my god, consistency. You have to do something every day. There are no big leaps in learning. It's just like with learning language. You just can't expect to look at things once and know them immediately. You have to go through it a ton of times. You have to practice. You may notice that, oh, I'm doing this wrong. Then you have this idea that maybe I should change it this way. And then it becomes much greater. Things that you practice on also stay in your repertoire, so your technique gets better. So that's the thing you need to remember. Also, when you're practicing a new cover or a song, reference back to the original one, because original songs are built for the band. When you're thinking about doing a cover, you just have to go back to think about what they have done, so you can have a clearer idea of what you want to do with the song. And if your arrangement doesn't feel the right arrangement for you, like if it's too easy, if it's too hard, if there are some new ideas you want to do, if you get this wrong feeling about it, change it. Also get feedback when you're practicing things. Like fresh ears spot mistakes easier than your own, because once you go through a thing like 50 times, 100 times, 1,000 times, you just kind of go the same way you have always gone, and maybe you have some mistakes you can't even hear or notice anymore. When you get feedback, you're just like, oh, I could do this better, and it just becomes greater and greater. And also you can bounce some ideas around, and that may be very helpful if you have another person to talk about the songs. Before you even start thinking about recording a song, you have to practice it until you know it very well. Like it has to be easy, and or you can mess around with the song, and just after that point you can move on to recording. So I'm not gonna say that much about actual recording progress. There are some very good tutorials, so watch some guides to actual filming and editing, because those things you have to know kind of before you even go for it. Things that you need to know about music videos is that audio is much more important than video. You can film with a potato, but if it sounds like heaven singing, it's okay. Go for the high quality audio. And I know that not everyone has the monetary ways to go for the great audio, and it sucks, but go with whatever you have. Like phones are pretty good with the microphones, so those are something you might think about. Also, there are some people who record in parts or record audio and video separately, which is a thing, but I personally like doing it in one sitting, and with pianists it's really hard to actually break it down because editing becomes just hard. Before you even go for recording, warm up and play the song once or twice, because then you have it in close memory and your body is ready. Film a couple of runs and then choose what you think is the best one. And if you want to use your notes, go for them. It's no shame using sheet music or your notes, because those are things that eventually you may not want to use them in live situations, but videos and live situations are very different. And also learn not to be camera shy. It's a very different thing than play in front of a camera, because people, they are more forgiving. Cameras remember everything. People may just kind of go over it and forget your mistakes, but cameras capture it. Learn to accept cameras in a different way that you would accept people. In this recording part, I'm going to talk about acoustic versus electronic instruments in a very brief manner. I think that your needs, your repertoire and skills define what you will need. Obviously, acoustic is better for expression, but there will be recording problems. You will have to have a microphone or something external. Whereas with electronic instruments, you can plug in a memory card or something like that, and it makes recording simple and also tweaking the sound. Generally, electronic instruments can be quite flat, unless you're just kind of putting a lot of money into them. Even though some instruments are cheaper when they're electronic, I think violins are cheaper in acoustic manner, but electronic pianos are way cheaper than acoustic ones. Especially like my piano was like 2.5 grand, and if I wanted to have an acoustic piano that is as good or better than my current one, I would have to have paid over 5 grand, and it's a lot to pay. Electronic instruments are very good for doing covers. So this last part considers these kind of miscellaneous tips and tricks I have for you. And my first tip would be the use your artistic liberty. I mean, do what you feel like, because you're behind the wheel. It's not the original artist, it's you. So go for what you think sounds good. And the second thing I could think of is editing, because it makes a huge difference to your quality. You can enhance your audio, but also if you're doing acoustic recordings, you can lessen the background noise. And that's the thing you need to think about. And also cutting the material you have correctly, empty moments of time in the beginning and in the end. And also you can add video quality with filters. If your camera is a potato, you can make the video look a lot better if you just add some filters, and that works for a long way, because filters are rather easy to add. Editing can be time consuming, especially in music business, because you have to have those synchronized videos. And also synchronize your things properly, because nothing is more pissing off than having the sound come like a second too early or a second too late. If it's too big, it's gonna just push people away. The next thing I think you should think about is going through artists. Like, I think some people have the opinion that going through artists is kind of lazy, but I think it's a good idea, especially if you're starting out, because once you immerse yourself into a certain artist, it's much easier to take on their whole production. You have that artist in your repertoire. Well, some people's music changes a lot throughout the years, but some bands stay very faithful to their sounds. Adding several tracks or loops is a great thing. Like, singers could use a cappella methods that you film different parts or do different loops so that you have more things going on. Experience will show you what works and what doesn't work. You have to try things to know that if it's a good idea or not. Experimentation is very great. If you don't experiment at all, how do you know what to go for? Like, if you just follow the same pattern, you will never challenge yourself, and also challenging yourself is a good thing. And also, this last thing, learning not to be a perfectionist. Once you can accept your mistakes, that you can accept that, okay, I may have one mistake, it's just one mistake in this whole run, and other versions I have are filled with mistakes. So you just have to go into the whole business with the mentality that you can never be truly perfect. There will always be something you can improve on, and that means that you have to know when it is the correct time to actually film things, and you have to also know when not to do things. I think that's all I want to say for today. If I missed something, please comment below if you think that there are something some tricks you might think might help other people, or something I should have mentioned in this video, because obviously my view is rather limited. And yes, my pronunciation has kind of worse throughout the video, and I'm not sorry about this because I'm not a native speaker, and also my voice is going, which is great. Thank you for your time, and I will see you in my next videos. Bye!